I am here to introduce Reese Chenault, who many of you know is the National Coordinator of U.S. Labor Against the War. I'm stoked to be able to do this. I like this guy. So Reese came barnstorming onto my radar about 3 years ago when he was hired to fill the big shoes of Michael Eisinger. So IVW, now About Face, has a long history and relationship with U.S. Labor Against the War that I won't touch on right now, but I was really excited to be able to build with new leadership and really have appreciated their work over the many years. So Reese was hired with a very specific mission in mind, to be the person willing to have the hard conversations both inside of his organization and in the anti-war movement more broadly to move our shared work into the 21st century. When I first met Reese, I was struck by how he came in with a lot of curiosity. He asked all the right questions, but is also fearless in his conviction that now is the time to rebuild the anti-war movement we need in this country. Reese brings his time anti-war organizing on his historically black university's campus and the many difficult and successful conversations he had with his peers. He also brings a wealth of experience organizing with workers all over the South and Mid-Atlantic, organizing with unions such as SEIU, AFSCME, Restaurant Opportunity Center New Orleans, the Teamsters, and the two black worker centers he co-founded in DC and Baltimore. Reese brings the base building fundamentals we are going to need on the long road ahead, coupled with the deep conviction that grassroots, frontline communities are best positioned to lead a new generation of work against militarism. This is crystal clear when you look at the communities and the folks Reese and U.S. Law center in their work, whether that be the poor and working class, brown and black communities who find themselves directly in the path of the war machine, people who work in defense factory jobs in their towns, who deal with recruiters knocking on their doors, or face police officers wielding militarized tactics and equipment against their own families, or the many diaspora communities who have come to the U.S. due to our country's endless wars landing on their homes and in their lives. In the past 3 years, I've watched Reese operate from a place of radical vulnerability with a vision for the path forward and with concrete actions that push the ball forward every day. Sometimes you can't miss what Reese and U.S. Labor Against the War are up to, like their inspiring work to build labor and anti-militarist solidarity with the Koreas, or to tour union locals across the country with powerful Muslim activists to dig into how Islamophobia impacts workers and helps justify endless wars. But often Reese's work is behind the scenes, and I'm here to tell you it is no less important. Unsurprisingly, he does the work anyway because it is abundantly clear to me that Reese isn't in this for the accolades. He's doing the work because he wants to see us win. And he has a plan to get us there, and I'm really grateful for that. I consider Reese a friend, a comrade, not in arms, but in liberation, and someone I will walk alongside anywhere without any hesitation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Reese Chenault.
This is the 2018 William Sloane Coffin Award awardee, Reese Chenault, the 2018 William Sloane Coffin Peace Award recipient.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How y'all doing? All right, stay with me now, stay with me. I've been up since 4 in the morning, so you're about to get something fast and loose. Be careful. Be careful. Matt knows me real well. Matt knows that I often am quite reckless with my speech, so you're in for a ride tonight, because I've been up since really early in the morning. First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't make sure we thank a few people. Can we get a big round of applause for the Peace Action folks tonight? Because y'all have really shown out. And the organizers responsible, Aziz, Sally, everyone else responsible, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me also thank U.S. Labor Against the War's chapter in New York City. Y'all are here tonight looking very lovely in your finest. Can we get a hand for those nice folks? They are up here in the front. All right, let's get into it. So I'm going to talk today about 3 things: ice cream, eucalyptus leaves, and us. I hear some amens from the audience already. I know there's some ice cream fans in this audience. There's a place I remember named Draeger's in Shaker Heights, Ohio. It was on the corner of Van Aken Boulevard next to a clothing store, and it was down the street from my grandma's house, my Gram's house. And it's a scene that's it's firmly attached to my grandmother's youth, but also mine. I'm going to quote an article about Draeger's. Happily for nostalgia buffs, little has changed here except for the prices in the half-century past. As always, Draeger's waitresses provide tableside service and set each guest's place with a lacy paper doily and a small glass of water. Sodas, sundaes, and milkshakes are still served in real glassware with honest-to-goodness metal spoons. Doesn't that sound nice? Now, my grandma would give me chores to do, and I'd take those nickels and dimes and quarters, and I'd save them for this moment at the ice cream parlor, right? We'd sit, her with usually very little, she just wasn't big into the sweets, maybe a sundae, and then me with my mint chocolate chip ice cream because it is my favorite, and Draeger's was the bomb. That was the best mint chocolate chip ice cream ever. And we talk about life. Those were such good times, and I love what they do to my heart when I allow them in. Draeger's closed maybe 10 years ago, and it was replaced by a Walgreens. I remember being really sad when I first heard, but over time, that sadness has been melted into a fondness for the memory. If I was being honest with myself then when I was sad, I'd know that no matter how many times I'd gone back, the memory would still be so much better than the actual experiencing. Now today we're celebrating U.S. labor against the war, and this relationship, our relationship, often reminds me of these memories. There's a tendency in these circles to be nostalgic, longing for direct actions in the past and familiar faces. I myself originally prepared a speech that was redolent with gestures towards this dynamic past, recalling our work with Iraqi trade unionists and the passage of the AFL-CIA resolution, I'll say it and not correct myself, that so much of our organizational work was formed around. U.S. law has been a leader in moving labor to the left for over a decade now. But when the UN panel on climate change released their report announcing that maybe we had about 10 years essentially to change course on how we lived if we wanted to continue living, I've recognized that I could be confident that history would play a role in tonight's proceedings and that I didn't need to delve into it. I was clear in my feeling that if I was going to talk to this group tonight about anything, I'd be talking about what we need to be, not what we were. And that's when I started thinking about eucalyptus. So why eucalyptus? Eucalyptus is a plant that often lives in dry, hot regions. And like many other plants of this type, it is grown accustomed to the heat. In fact, many of this type of plant, not just eucalyptus, encourages fire. Eucalyptus, in fact, produces a kind of oil or resin that sometimes is so combustible that it is not uncommon for eucalyptus plants to spontaneously burst into flames. At first reading this, I freaked out a little bit because I'd never heard of spontaneously combusting plants. But then I learned something when I reached out to friends who actually fight fires for a living. They said that fire actually does a lot to clear space, increase availability of water, and provide intense heat to grow for other plants. So sometimes a fire is exactly what you need. Now, the illusions here for the setup are obvious. We're living on a warming planet, yes. But we are also in a time of dramatic changes in the political environment around us. See, I was in a lecture hall some months back listening to a historian wax poetic about anti-fascist movements in Italy. And during the question and answer period, a young person rose and said, "Could you go into more detail about what it would take to defeat fascism's rise in the United States?" The historian paused and, sensing this was a question looking for something more accessible, reached for a better analogy while cleaning his glasses. See, he encouraged the audience to consider for a moment that fascism is not some senseless evil brought about by demonic forces, but instead an infection that found opportunity in our current political body. Wage inequality has reached staggering heights. Dark money has poisoned the political well so thoroughly that we can no longer tell where it comes from, and most mechanisms to protect us from it have been disabled or broken. And most significantly for this group, the military-industrial complex has embedded itself so deeply that Americans, despite disagreeing with its purpose, intent, and targets, see no end to war's presence in our culture. This stuff has rotted our society, eating away at institutions we value. These elements, not unlike a mouth riddled with tooth decay, are a prime breeding ground for the infection of fascism. So what's the solution? Well, here's where things got interesting. See, old dude said, well, we might have lost these things, these institutions. They seem unable to adapt and they don't work for us anymore. New ones must take their place and the old ones must be destroyed. Well, the people in the audience gasped, but I laughed out loud, again, because I'm kind of reckless. But my man was suggesting that we do like our body does with some infections and turn up the heat, and it didn't feel pleasant because, you know, fevers don't feel great. See, we're not fighting the fire this time. This moment requires that we be engulfed in flames. Yes, I'm talking about American society, and yes, I'm talking about burning some things down, but let's be clear, I'm also talking about our movement. See, and I know there's nurses in the audience, so I'm playing a little fast and loose here with the facts, but I'm sure y'all will either forgive me or you'll meet me out in the alleyway after this is over. I know how y'all roll. Some infections don't just require us to burn the body. Some require that we burn the belongings in a shallow grave. Some require that we burn down the house. Some even require that we burn down the whole village. Are we ready for that? Are we feeling the heat on our outstretched fingers? Sometimes I wonder. I wonder if we are ready when we reject the power and clarity of youth in favor of comfortable ideas and wishful thinking. I wonder when we marginalize people we claim to be comrades and co-conspirators with because it is easy and convenient. I wonder when we demand perfection from ourselves, knowing that in the end, no one gives a damn about your political adjective when the police fire tear gas into the crowd or corner you in an alley. I wonder and I worry that we haven't done enough listening and way too much talking with the people we care about. That we've traded momentum for feel-good and focus for tax deductibility. Tonight I'm going to listen to that professor the way my teachers in college actually hoped I'd listen to them. I'm really sorry, Dr. Phillipson. And actually apply some lessons today. Tonight I want to encourage us to be engulfed in flames. Let's be an energetic, raging, passionate fire to burn away the scourge of fascism that has infected our White House. And real talk, if it changes our politics, changes our society, changes our economy, even in some ways that remove old comforts, may we be all the better for it. Let the fire of tomorrow sweep away our doubts about whether our movements can be intergenerational. Because reality, if we don't clear the old brush to make space for younger people, like now, there won't be room for them to grow. So I say let the fire burn. Let it make us a stronger and healthier forest. Thank you.